There is a booming film TV market happening right here on the African continent, and it is the International Saloon for Audiovisual Content, which will take place from June 26th, that is tomorrow, to June 28th. And this happens to be the very third edition. And also moving on to James Bond, there is going to be a new young brush and playable character. And this has to do with the digital game they are yet to release concerning James Bond in this Amazon era. And does it really speak to the potential rendition of the live action James Bond? Well, we'll be finding out more about this right here on the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Film Mandate, where I bring to you movie news, reviews, and reactions both from the African front and the international scene. Thank you so much for joining me for this very episode. So, we'll be delving right into the stories for today. And in this very first story, in the year 2023, an international market was established for film and television in the country of Ivory Coast, to be specific, Abidjan, and it attracted a lot of people from all over, the world, all over the globe, and they established a film TV market which drew about 400 participants. And same is going to be taking place this year, but this time around with about 700 participants. And I want to read an article that is published in the Variety, which highlights on that my yeah, so which highlights on that. So my web is not really is acting funny, so please pardon me. I may have to read it without you necessarily seeing the article. So pardon me at the moment. I'm trying to sort it out. Yeah, so it looks like I will have to read it without displaying it. Pardon me for the mishappening that is happening right now. Okay, so let me read it briefly. It says that Abidjan's SICA or SICA positions as a linchpin event for African film and television, and it is written by Esi Asibu for Variety. So, a burgeoning film TV market, the International Saloon for Audiovisual Content, SICA, is set to return June 26th to June 28th for its third edition in Abidjan, positioning itself as a linchpin for Africa's film and television. And television. Sorry, I think I missed my way. So, position itself as a linchpin for Africa's film and television industry. This year's edition, moreover, is more about ambitious than ever, unfurling under the banner of digital sovereignty and exporting our stories, building a competitive and globalized African audiovisual market. SICA, the International Salon for Audiovisual Content, will focus on strengthening the continent's digital footprint while boosting the global reach of its talent and content. Of its talent and content. SICA 2025 is all about consolidating Africa's digital sovereignty and fostering a structured export of its stories. SICA General Commissioner Umar Kunate tells Variety, we want to reaffirm our capacity to produce, distribute, and create value for our own content on our own platforms, and at the same time, give this content the international visibility it deserves. The, the strategy is that strategy is reflected across this year's program. It features an opening panel with ministers from key sectors, including culture, youth, tourism, and digital economy. In Kunate's words, the program is a concrete response to the versatility of transversality, sorry, of these issues with panels, co-production labs, and workshops on regulation rights, AI, and sovereign data. SICA 2025 also brings new initiatives. The SICA Business Hub will offer direct financial support to promising projects, a SICA deal, which will recognize excellence across local DTT channels, and a SICA off initiative to take screenings directly to 4 districts of Abidjan, Yopougon, Abobo, Kodi, and Kumasi, yeah, democratizing the forum by making it accessible to local audiences. Let me just take this last paragraph and then we'll move on. So, in a promotional video on SICA's website, Kunate has further detailed these innovations. This year, we want participants to better appreciate the content. He says that's why we've decided to reduce the number of panels and focus on quality. The SICA Business Hub is also designed to go beyond concept stage pitches. Here he explains young creators can come, present pilots, and seek potential funding. So let me leave the article here and then, yeah. So for those of us who may not be aware of this program, the Saloon International Saloon for Audiovisual Content, it was established in the year 2023, and already it is making big strides and waves. For when you look at some of the people attending this particular event, it is really massive. It is really massive, and they are of a pedigree to really wield influence for this particular program. And what excites me when you read the entire article, of which I'll leave the link in the comment description in the description below, it speaks about the fact or the need for a, a market integration for all African film industries. And that is very interesting because that is what I've been speaking about. Because without the necessary integration of the film markets from all African countries, the needed impact will not be done. And it also speaks about having its own digital platforms to promote Africa's content. And it does make sense to approach it from that regard because without the necessary um, platform to push forward the African content on a larger scale, most of these contents will be lost in the clutter of other productions from different parts of the world, and that indeed is a challenge that as a continent or as African countries we are yet to overcome. That is not to say we shouldn't have the African films or TV programs on other contents or platforms like the Netflixes, Amazon, and the other places, which indeed is ideal, but attention will not be given to it on a larger scale as compared to the origins of the nations they come from. And I know Netflix and Amazon have tried their presence in Africa and it has not really worked. But it looks like, regardless, Showmax, which is heavily dominant in Nigeria, is doing well compared to what Netflix was able to do. And that I don't know whether it's mainly because of pricing of the subscription or other factors may be involved. But regardless, the approach of SICA is something welcoming, particularly when we are looking at making Africa a, a hub for filmmaking. And that is what Ivory Coast is trying to do, to position Ivory Coast not just as a, a film market with the SICA, but also to even position itself as a filming destination for other countries. And it looks like that is going around a lot in this day and age, particularly looking at the all like Australia having been one of such places, South Africa and all other places, and several other countries trying to pursue such initiative. And that is what seems to be going around. And Ivory Coast for this particular event is doing well because from the very second one they organized, which drew about 400 participants. They are pushing it up to 700 participants, and that's exciting. And it's taking place just tomorrow, beginning tomorrow. So for this event to be happening, it looks like something good is happening in on the continent, and I'm indeed excited about it because it is about time that Africa finds its own solutions, find its own solutions to meet its own, challenges and problems. And this is in the right direction. This is a step in the right direction because regardless of how many good content we produce, some years would be given the necessary attention provided it can generate the necessary funding. But in these beginning stages and challenges we are already facing in Africa, having our own platform that will be continental wide is something worth welcoming. And not just that, but to have a film market as this where opportunities will be given to young filmmakers to be able to pitch their pilots with regards to series and then find the necessary network to bring the necessary funding for these projects is really, really something that ought to be done. If you read the article further, it speaks about how there are brilliant ideas and talents on this continent, but unfortunately, it doesn't have the necessary platform to draw the necessary funding to make sure that these ideas are produced and enjoyed on the world stage. And that has been a challenge for quite a long while. That has been a challenge for quite a long while. So SICA will be delving more into it when it finally happens, and then whatever the outcomes may be, I will do my best to bring those results onto this very platform of the film mandate. So I'm excited about what is happening in Ivory Coast starting tomorrow, June 26th to June 28th, and we'll be delving more into these stories. So moving on to my second story, yeah, I'm hoping my yeah. So moving on to my second story, James Bond. It was quite recent when the Amazon wrestled the creative control from the Broccolis to um, that is Barbara Broccoli and Hackers, and to have total creative control over the property of James Bond. And already they had acquired MGM Studios, which happens to be the studio that owned the rights to produce the James Bond property. And it's been a while with whether rumors circulating as to who will play James Bond. However, with the digital or video game coming, they seem to be leaning towards a younger James Bond who is brash and who is unconventional compared to the James Bond that we already know. If you Let's just delve into the article that talks more about the approach that they are going with, and it is published in the Hollywood Reporter, saying that the first James Bond of the Amazon era is young, reckless, and a playable character. So 007 First Light will be released next year, featuring a fresh take on Bond from Hitman developer IO Interactive, and this is written by Alex Wiprin. I hope I got the name right. So the first new James Bond under the complete ownership of Amazon MGM Studios will make its debut in 2026, and he's young, brash, and has a robust origin story and a mysterious scar on his right cheek, and is a playable character. The future of the James Bond film franchise is still being written. Amy Pascal and David Heyman are hard at work on that. But the next chapter of James Bond, the IP, will begin next year in what will be the first project to feature the iconic character since Amazon stunned the world by buying out control from Barbara Broccoli and Michael Gene Wilson. In 2026, the Danish video game publisher IO Interactive will release 007 First Light, a new video game franchise starring a wholly original version of Bond. It's a big deal, not just because it is first new Bond to be released under Amazon and the first new version of the James Bond character since Daniel Craig starred in Casino Royale in 2006, but it will also be the first major James Bond game to be released in 15 years since 2010's 007 Bloodstone, which featured a digital likeness of Craig as Bond. And it is being developed by IO, the publisher behind the Hitman franchise, one of the biggest pieces of video game IP in history. So yeah. So Hakan Abrak, the CEO of IO Interactive, tells the Hollywood Reporter in an interview that there is a lot of pressure to deliver, given both his studio's track record and the legacy of James Bond, the character. Bond is a very cherished and important IP, and a lot of people have grown up with that. He says it does mean a lot to a lot of people. It does mean a lot to a lot of people. Of course, video games like films take years to make, and First Light is no exception. The company announced its plans to develop the game in late 2020, so most of the game's progress has been with both Amazon and the Broccoli family's Eon Productions as its partners. Abrak says that the change in ownership has had little impact on the game's development. I think the most important thing to say here is that I'm really happy that the character and the story and all that is unchanged. Abrak says, we've been having a really good collaboration with MGM and with Eon, and now Amazon MGM. We've had a strong vision both for the story and for the character, and what we wanted to achieve with this project and how we want to touch people's hearts out there. That vision has been supported. That means crafting an entirely new James Bond, one that will feel right to fans of the franchise, while also being fresh to younger consumers that may be more familiar with Agent 47 from Hitman. Let me just jump to the next paragraph that says that the result is a Bond that is young and brash with a cutting edge sense of humor, but also an optimism, naivety that might surprise fans of the franchise. He is not a completely perfect cut diamond from day one. He's not a Bond that is completely or on top of his game yet. He's not very well versed in the tuxedos and martinis yet. Abrak says it's something that he is being introduced to, this rough world of espionage. So that is James Bond for you. And so this take on this James Bond feels very fresh and different from whatever we've seen in particularly the live action 007 James Bond. And I like the fresh take on it. It's more like a deconstruction of the character. I would even rather say, even prior to him becoming full blown out James Bond, if you read down further, it talks about how this very James Bond is not used to the tuxedos, it's not used to the drinking the martinis, um, stirred not. I mean, he has a term for it anytime he appears in the movies. Now, I've been asking myself, in as much as this is the video game, one thing that stood out to me was the fact that prior to this particular video game, let me see if I can bring that one up. Yeah, prior to this particular video game, we had another video game that was developed with the likeness of Daniel Craig, as James Bond, and that is 2010's 007 Bloodstone. My my antenna picking up. I mean, this has not been reported anywhere, but I'm just asking myself. So if they did a first one or the previous video game in the digital likeness of Daniel Craig, does it mean that it is possible they have already cast the new James Bond? And is this video game hinting, that is 007 First Light, hinting as to the direction in which they are going with the character? Well, we are yet to find out if finally they announce who the new James Bond may be, and then how the approach they are going about it. But I wouldn't be surprised, because in the discussions going forward, there's been conversations as to whether this new James Bond, as to the age of this new James Bond. And the approach is that they want to go with a very young James Bond. And how young can that be? How young can that be? So I went online to find out the ages of James Bond. Let me see if I can pull it up onto the screen. So I went to check the how young this James Bond can be, and let me see if let me see if I can bring it up. Okay, so on your screen, just on Google, I was checking the ages of all the James Bond that we've had so far, and from the list we have here, the very young James Bond, or the youngest James Bond. I mean, the youngest actor to have played James Bond was at the age of 29 years old on Her Majesty's Secret Service. That is 1969, which was produced in 1969 by, and the actor was George Lazenby. The question then would mean that would they go younger than this? How young are they going to go with regards to this character of James Bond for the film? That is when the film comes up. Because if you look at the trailer of the video game, which I wish I could react to it, but it's a video game, so I would leave the link to the trailer in the description. But if you look at the character of the James Bond being portrayed in a video game, he's very young and he has scars, meaning that he's very brash, made a lot of mistakes and all that. But he's now coming into his own as um, as a character or as James Bond or as an agent. So this indeed is a different direction they are going towards. As to how young it will go, I don't know whether it's going to be like 23 or even far younger than that. But I think the approach is quite interesting, and it will be very interesting to see whether the video game will translate into the feature film itself, given it's a very different take than what we are used to in terms of the very suave, collected, calm James Bond who knows his craft very well. So I think I like the approach they are going in, and whether this is what we'll be seeing on screen, we are yet to know. So let me know your thoughts about this particular story. If you think they may go with this video game, First Light is actually hinting, giving it a gist of what James Bond's character is likely to be when the live action film arrives. So moving on from this second story of James Bond to another interesting story that happened a couple of days ago. Animation that is, regardless of its form, but particularly traditional animation, seems to have vanished, with particularly Disney ending its traditional animation with, I think the last they produced was Princess and the Frog, The Princess and the Frog, if I'm not mistaken, which happened in the very early 2010s. However, in Asia, traditional animation is still ongoing and even receiving a different take or a boom, particularly in China and Japan and the whole lot. And recently at the Shanghai Film Festival, there was some discussions as to how animation is booming, big in China or Asia to be in general. And particularly it's happening in the area of mythological stories. When you're talking about China and how animation is booming, it's happening in the area of mythological stories, not just for the traditional animation but across board animation. And if you check the box office mojo website as it stands now, the the biggest film with regards to revenue so far is Neza 2, which is an animation from um, China. And that is how big this movie grossed with regards to the box office receipt. And it is already turning, sort of revolutionizing the film industry in China with regards to the animation uh, industry. So let's read an article written by Matthew Scott that says that the Whitesnake director, China's animation boom must lead to creative risk, not repetition. Zhao says the next generation of creators must move beyond myth-based IP as China's animation sector matures. So China's animation director Zhao, whose Whitesnake earned $70 million in 2019 and helped launch the current craze for the genre in China, says the next generation of creators must move beyond myth-based IP as the nation's animation sector matures. As the fanfare continues to sound around Neza 2, the highest grossing animated film in global box office history, Zhao is, I don't know what I'm pronouncing it right. Is it Zhao or Zhao? Okay, Zhao is urging his peers to embrace greater diversity in storytelling as the industry grapples with the unprecedented $2.2 billion global haul of that record-breaking sequel. As recently as a decade ago, the Chinese animation industry was still taking baby steps, but a recent boom has been led by talents such as Yang Yu, aka Jiao Zi, and then responsible for both Nizar and the sequel that went ballistic. While the world has warmed to the tale of the little demon boy struggling along his quest for immortality, Zhao urged caution when it came to other Chinese filmmakers looking or even dreaming of replicating the success. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, as more and more young people transition from animation enthusiasts to creators, they will have more space to experiment with diverse content, said Zhao, who directed an earlier version of the Neza 2 story, New Gods Neza Reborn, in 2021. I am optimistic. I'm optimistic because the animation industry in China actually does not have very large numbers of directors and creators. If you look at the credits behind a film like Neza 2, there might be around 1 to 2,000 people at the moment. That's basically everyone in the Chinese animation industry. Zhao in this week serving on the jury of for the Golden Globe Goblet Award for Animation at the 27th Shanghai International Film Festival, China's largest annual industry gathering, and spoke along fellow jury members, Oscar-nominated Irish filmmaker Nora Twomey, The Secret of Kells, and Japan's Koji Yamamura Mount's Head. The festival has long supported animation, as has the city that hosts it. Given that Shanghai was where the first ever Asian animated feature, Princess Iron Fan, was produced way back in 1941. In 1941. So animation is actually booming big in Asia right now as we speak. And as it stands now, Neza 2 is actually the top grossing movie this year. And perhaps may remain the highest grossing animation or animated movie of all time. And as a result of that, it is sort of moving a lot of young creators or animators into the industry of animation, where a lot wants to replicate the success of Neza 2 by telling myth-based stories. But I like what Zhao is saying, because it looks like the safe bet now is to tell myth-based stories in animation because of how successful Neza 2 has been. So as a result of that, he is advocating for industry personnel to look at having diverse stories being told, not necessarily with regards to the myth-based, which seems to be a sure success now, but stories to be diverse in terms of any genre whatsoever. And this indeed has been some of the challenge of film industries worldwide, when one success is found in a particular genre or a particular story, it looks like all filmmakers wants to exploit it, and it's understandable, because if it is a sure way to make good box office returns, you would have a lot of people trooping in. One example is the superhero genre of stories, where moving from the 2010s or even earlier, you had a lot of studios going into that area because it became a sure way to make box office returns. Because without making your money back, indeed, it will be difficult to sort of keep on making the movies that would entertain audiences. Because if you keep running at a loss, definitely you're not going to get investors or financiers for your production, and that is something challenging that may happen soon if animators are not able to make their money back. So I can understand why animators or filmmakers in Asia in particular would want to replicate the success of Neza 2, looking at how successful it has been. And if Neza 2 had received even a wider release all over the world, perhaps it will even shoot up from 2.2 to even a very bigger number than it has already successfully achieved. So him advocating for diversity is actually something that should be done. But the question is that would the audience like it? And I think they will, because if the story is told well, if those stories are told well, it doesn't even matter the medium. Audiences will flock to watch it. Audiences will flock to watch it. So it is something that I believe is in the right direction. His advocacy for, or him advocating for stories to be told with diversity, diversity of stories ought to be told, and not just necessarily based on myth. It's something that it's welcoming, or it's something that ought to be done. If you look at what is happening in America, you have animation stories that are told differently from the superhero genre. Minecraft. I mean, no, it's not Minecraft. You have Super Mario Brothers, and that was a hit. And then you also have Inside Out, which was one very successful movie. So there is the market for diversity of stories once it is well told. If it's not well told, you are sure to have audiences reject it because they may not have gravitated towards the story if it wasn't well told. So I'm happy for what is happening in the Chinese, film market, or the Asian film market with regards to animation, because for so long a time, animation has not really received much attention that it ought to. And I'm glad that regardless of whichever form of animation may be, but I'm more excited about traditional animation. It's actually going to pick up, get a boost as it deserves. In the West, traditional animation seems to have gone down a little, looking at how um, Disney has abandoned that craft and moved on to 3D. But in other places, particularly in Asia, they never stopped. The Studio Ghibli kept on with the traditional animation and has kept on doing that till now. And I'm happy that at least in the region that Studio Ghibli finds itself in, the entire animation industry seems to have received a boost and will be doing well. So it is indeed exciting for the animation lovers who love, China or Asian films as well. That in the next couple of years, there's going to be more animated films coming our way, or your way, wherever you find yourself now. So this story sums up my presentation for today, and I hope you enjoyed it today. So whatever comments or thoughts you have on this development, on these stories, I'll be glad if you share them in the comment section below so that we can respond to it. So thank you so much for joining me for this very episode. I'll be coming your way again tomorrow with some exciting stories as well. I'm Papa O2, and I'll see you soon.